y'all, I'm Ellen. We've been super inspired by our journeys of self-healing and discovery.
And I'm Sam, and we want to share our experiences with you to help you get curious about yourself, reconnect, and get intentional about your life so you know what makes you happy.
Welcome to Woo New, the podcast.
So this week we got to speak with Kaita Mrazek from Ghost Flower, and this was such an incredible conversation. Kaita's been a really important part of our journey. We met at another event that we were both hosting together about a year ago, and we wanted to bring Kaita on to give us a little bit more information about her company, Ghost Flower. She is the co-founder, and why it's so important right now to think about self-care and the ways that we can connect with our bodies. And this episode, we go through their activewear that was started by Susie Piebler and their movement practice that Kaita and their other co-founder, Bonnie, created together based on the 5 Chinese elements and the meridian lines, and the activewear all leans into that. But really, it's a bigger movement that these women are creating that we're really excited to share with you guys. They're recontextualizing how we come into the relationships with our bodies. And, they're building a practice around how healing comes from having permission to have your experience and to address the things that are limiting you without having to shy away from them or feel ashamed of them or be afraid of them. And in this practice where they use the meridian lines that are tied to the fascia in our body that help us release the stress that lives within our bodies after traumatic events. And it's so important right now, especially given that we're here and we're still in the middle of COVID and there's so much going on politically and socially with the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's so important now more than ever to really make sure that we're taking a step back to take care of ourselves and listen to our bodies, because we have to stay strong. And this is just the beginning. And, start that dialogue again with our bodies. And Ghost Flower is here to help us do it. We are so excited to be sitting down today with Kaita Mrazek. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it.
From Ghost Flower. She is one of the founders and super incredible woman. We met her last year, actually, when we did this digital detox event that ended up being nothing like we had planned, but it was like the universe had brought us together, and it was meant to be just this beautiful moment for us to meet and start working together. So thank you, Kaita, for being here. And I would love to just kick it off with you giving us a little background on Ghost Flower.
Oof. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. I admire you guys so much, and your curiosity and your intellect around all of this is just, I love it. So anyway, thank you. So Ghost Flower was a brand started by a former client of mine, Susie Piebler. And I was teaching Pilates at the time, and she is just very, very curious about self-healing and movement and just learning how to take better care of her body. And so she started learning more about Chinese medicine and did some stretching practices that were related to meridians or energy channels in the body based on Chinese medicine. And as she was learning the practice, she was like, I can't keep track of where these meridians are when I'm moving. Like, I want to know how to apply this when I'm in a yoga practice and I'm in a warrior pose. Like, how are my meridians organizing? And so she started drawing meridians on her yoga clothes with a magic marker so that she could keep track. And then she realized nobody was doing this. And so she decided to create this brand. And she brought on me and a colleague and good friend of mine, Bonnie Crotzer, who's kind of an expert in meridian stretching. She's trained in a practice called resistance flexibility, where you're using the meridians as a guide for how to stretch, and you're using a special technique where you're resisting as you're lengthening the muscle, which affects the fascial pathways, which I don't know. I have a feeling your audience has heard about fascia before, but
but let's assume maybe not.
Let's assume we don't. And by the way, stop me anytime, because sometimes I get on a tangent and it gets really exciting for me and everybody's like, okay, too much information, slow down.
No, this is great.
Yeah,
but
never too much.
Oh, good. Well, a doctor that we work with, Dr. Keown, is a doctor of Chinese medicine and an emergency room doctor. And he wrote a really wonderful book some years ago called The Spark in the Machine, where he sort of marries this Eastern and Western science together. And he explains that the meridians actually track along this special type of connective tissue in your body called fascia. It's a connective tissue that's throughout your whole body. It's sort of a collagen-like substance. It wraps around every muscle fiber. It coats nerves. It can take on the form of scar tissue when it builds up, when it accumulates. So it's like a really strong tensile kind of structure. But what's also really cool about it is its own type of conductor called piezoelectric. So an energy can flow along this type of tissue. And so in theory, something like qi, what Chinese medicine defines as sort of your universal life energy, can flow and communicate along these fascial pathways. So with Chinese medicine, let me step back. So Ghost Flower took all these ideas and put them together onto clothes. Activewear that you wear, and you get a map of the meridian system that then you can apply in whatever way inspires you. So some people wear it. I wear it to teach classes, and then I use it as a guide for my students to see on my body what areas of the body I'm focusing on opening or stretching. Some people like to use the channels to like kind of palpate along when they put the clothes on and just feel where their energy is stuck. And then we also added little logos along those seams, and those are mapping out acupressure points on your body. So those are places in your body where if you kind of press or massage, similar to like a trigger point, you might be able to feel where energy is stuck or where it's depleted. And by stimulating those points, you can bring a little bit more harmony into the flow of energy around your body. So yeah, I guess that's the starting point for Ghost Flower. In addition to the activewear itself, Bonnie and I created a movement practice because we figured that if you're just getting the clothes and you buy clothes and you don't know that much about it, you're going to put on the clothes and not really know what to do. And then it becomes a really great idea, but it's kind of a gimmick. And the part that we're really passionate about is what those clothes symbolize for you and your health. So what does it unlock for you in your life and in your body? And so it's like translating something that's been around for thousands of years, the practice of Chinese medicine, which can feel a little bit esoteric or difficult to understand in the beginning, and giving you a starting place that connects you to your body and how you want to process that. And then we have these ways of moving where you might do a pose that's going to open up your hamstrings, which is along the bladder channel, which is mapped on your leggings. But then you can also feel into, what's happening for me psychologically, emotionally, as I'm opening up my hamstrings. And then we check back to the School of Chinese Medicine, and you realize that a lot of the things that you're experiencing, they've already mapped out by studying for thousands of years.
I feel like when we went to your, I think it was the water element stretch class, acupuncture, and correct me with what the actual class name is, but we had gone up to Santa Barbara to see you and attend one of your classes. And one of the things that struck me from that experience was just how like it feels like yoga in a sense where you're doing these poses or you're going into these movements, but it's almost kind of like there's a qigong quality to it as well, where I felt like just things were being released in a way that I don't necessarily always or am conscious about when I'm doing yoga per se, maybe yin yoga was a little closer to that, but I found it really fascinating because I had never done movements like that before, with such a consciousness around the meridian points and what those, like pressing on those points, would actually release in my body.
That's so great to hear. Yeah, when we were creating the practice, Bonnie and I were drawing from a lot of different traditions, because ultimately what we're trying to do is create a container for people to come and like own their experience. So we draw really heavily from yoga poses and yoga shapes because, one, it's kind of more familiar now. It's become a little bit more mainstream. Um, but also because a lot of those shapes really directly address different meridians, because the meridians are mapped on your fascia, and that is also just going to boil down to regular movement mechanics. So, yoga poses are considering heavily your body mechanics and how to align and organize. And so they're a really nice complement to it. But what also was really important to us is not getting too sort of specific on the shapes themselves, because every body does have a different history to it, and the fascia kind of follows your body's history. So things are going to feel tighter in different places, and some things are going to be unconscious for people and very conscious for others. And so just creating an arena where you have permission to take on some movements and be prompted to look at things from a certain angle and then feel into what it means for you. That's really what we're after.
Yeah, that experience for me was so huge, because I remember the digital detox that we did when we were all, getting ready at the beginning, and we were talking about the portion that you were going to host. And I was like, I am not a yogi. I can't, I was in no way prepared to like get in front of a big group and do a bunch of yoga poses that I am far too inflexible for. And both that time and the class that Ellen and I attended were such a huge breakthrough for me, because I feel like you guys are really opening the door to people, quite honestly, like me, who don't feel like they 100% resonate with, being a yogi, because it's just never been that easy for me. And I know yoga is not easy, but it does feel like sometimes people so strongly associate that with other types of, self-healing or other, lifestyle rituals like meditations and stuff like that. Whereas you guys are sort of opening that door and saying, like, there's a totally different way to approach this that you can create yourself 100%.
Yeah, I love hearing that reflection back, because that's like very encouraging for what we're after. I think that part of what we're creating, in my hope, is a new context for looking at this kind of stuff. So like the context of a yoga class, historically, this was created by men, and you learn a series of poses with a one-on-one teacher, and you have to learn it a very specific way. There's a lot of traditions that aren't wrong or bad, but just these traditions come from kind of a masculine mindset that I think, and this is a generalization, but I've been sort of pondering it lately, that women tend to have a little bit more of a, like, we're more relational. We want more than just getting it right or wrong, but we find ourselves kind of trying to fit into perspectives that are good or bad, solve this problem, right or wrong, which is really helpful for us once in a while and keeps us protected and safe, but it also can feel kind of limiting and almost like punitive sometimes. And I think that a lot of healing comes from just having permission to have your experience, and to kind of like maybe start from normalizing things that are a little bit scary so that you can actually start looking at them. And then having this context, like this framework, where you get to actually take permission to address the issues that you're curious about, that you feel are limiting you. And they don't have to be bad things. Like having tight hamstrings doesn't make you a bad person.
My hamstrings are so tight.
And the worst thing, well, and the worst thing is, like, because your hamstrings are tight, you go into this context where you're not good unless they're flexible enough. You're not gonna wanna come back. So where do you get to do the healing if the thing that's supposed to help you is too frustrating or intimidating? We need to create a new context where you get to come in as who you are, because you're also way more than tight hamstrings. You know?
Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think you're absolutely right. Like I've heard a number of times, and I feel like I've even said it myself, like I suck at yoga, or like I'm just not stretchy, like meaning that there is already an inherent negative in that,
Mhm.
when rather it sounds like what you're saying is, the tightness is there for a reason, and it's calling attention to that area where you should look a little deeper and investigate what's going on. It's a signal. It's not a negative or wrong or shitty thing to be tight, but it's a clue for you to say, oh, why are my hamstrings tight? And I don't know, I feel like this year alone, I'm starting to become a little bit more like closer connected to my body, or just like becoming more conscious of the things that my body is trying to tell me or communicate to me. And it's
Mm.
kind of changed my life, slowly, but it's been very transformative, because I've never paid attention to the signals in my body. It's kind of almost like I'll have a feeling like, oh, I'm feeling a little anxious. And I don't track it necessarily to where it is in my body, or ask my body, okay, where do I feel it? Why is this here? And you know what I mean? Like your body holds so much intelligence. And I feel like from what I'm learning, the intelligence is actually in the fascia itself. And that's really
Mm.
where we store trauma. That's where we
Yeah.
store pain, all
It's
this
where the
stuff.
information lies. It's in all of those electric charges.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I find what you guys are doing so powerful, not just the line of activewear, but also this movement exercise, or this movement kind of this series of movements that you guys have created to help us investigate our bodies and to really connect back to it and really understand, or at least start the dialogue with our bodies again. Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
us have stopped talking to our bodies.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that. I love hearing that too. And part of the idea of the active wear is that we we have come up with this way of moving and relating. And actually, Bonnie teaches classes at SkyTing in New York, and that's where she lives, and I'm out here in California. And so we get together a couple times a year. We're on the phone a lot running the business together, but um, she's completely developed her own flavor based on her interests and the needs of the people that she serves in New York. And I'm going a very different direction out here. And we love that. Like when she comes to Santa Barbara, I'll be like, hey, why don't you teach my class? And I'll be a student, because my students would benefit from your perspective so much. And we want people to feel like what we're doing isn't the only way. It's just the take that we've had. And
Mm.
if you're not sure where to start, the clothes are a really great guide. A lot of people, we did our first teacher training last January. Most of the people who came were already movement instructors, just looking to augment what they already knew. And a portion of our training was focused on having them develop their own material based on the principles. The principles being how to stretch your tissue safely, paying attention to the fascia, this technique that Bonnie has learned, how to find acupressure points and kind of some basics with that, and then mapping the meridians. But beyond that, we're like, we want to know what you guys come up with, because whatever you already have learned and where you're coming from is only going to make this richer. We don't want you to discard the things that you were doing before that you found value in. We want you to use this as a jumping off point to something even bigger and greater, and go at it like free reign.
I love
Oh
that
my
so
God.
much. I just feel like it's going to reach so many people who would not have necessarily tried this before, and even people who are into dance and movement and yoga. I mean, this is another step beyond that of just really like mind body consciousness and like
Mhm.
coming back into yourself. It's so huge. And you're totally right. When we talk about like going to yoga classes and doing stuff like that, it is a perspective you go into where it's like you feel like the only thing you are is tight hamstrings. That's so intense, you know, and it happens so fast and so subconsciously.
Yeah.
This is super powerful. And so I think the other thing that we definitely want to touch on, because TCM is so complex, and you guys have done a really great job of sort of just helping to summarize the 5 elements and sort of how they work with chi. Can you tell us a little bit about what the elements mean and how you guys have applied that to the apparel?
Yeah.
And really quick too, just for people who are listening who don't know what TCM is, it's just short for traditional Chinese medicine.
Yes, thank you, Ellen.
Yeah. And I'd also like to say that before starting this company, I didn't really know much about Chinese medicine. So I just want to share that because we launched the company just around 2 years ago, and I started learning about it about a half a year before launch or so. And so when I get to do these kinds of interviews, I'm like, whoa, I actually like know something, you know, but I didn't.
In your power, girl.
Yeah, but I didn't go to school to practice this. We take it on as like translators. And so we also like bringing in experts like Dr. Keown, and I have like a whole bunch of acupuncturists that I'm now always like texting questions. They actually come to my class and take class with me a lot. And then sometimes if I blank on something in the middle of class, I'll be like, hey, you, what's this point for? You know, and I crowdsource the wisdom because I'm not the keeper of it. I'm just the translator. I like to just let it move through. But to get to where I am now, there's definitely been a passion for learning about it, but anybody can do it at any time if there's interest.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
So with the 5 elements, we decided to use this particular school of Chinese medicine called the 5 elements, really to as like a jumping off point. There's a whole bunch of different types of schools within Chinese medicine. And 5 elements takes the meridians, 12 main meridians, and it pairs them up with a yin and a yang. So that in your body, you'll always find one that's kind of on the inside of your body, the yin side, and one that's on the outer side, or you could think front and back. They always balance each other like that. And the 2 channels, yin and yang, then work together to create the type of energy that is that then Chinese medicine has outlined as an element. So kind of like how you have a horoscope sign, you may present certain types of Chinese medicine based on like just traits that are innate in you. And there's 5. So there's water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. I was super confused by metal when I first started. I'm like, but wait, what about air? And actually, metal is a combination of lungs and large intestine. So I think of the air element being in the metal element. But what's also kind of cool about it is it's linking 2 organs in your body that often work together to bring balance to your body. So, for example, the water element is bladder and kidney. And so most of us know what our bladder does. It like holds our urine until we have to pee. The kidneys are filtering your blood, cleaning your blood, and then taking the waste from the liquids and putting it into the bladder. So those 2 need to work well in harmony. And then there's all these kinds of emotional things that the Chinese associate with those organs. So in the water element, you find your relationship to fear and challenge. Fear is, you could think about your adrenal system. Your adrenals sit right on top of your kidneys. So there's all these layers we can go into, right? Where you have the organs, the organ pairing. Then you could also look at how the meridians are paired up in your body and just how you feel when you take poses where you're contracting the yin group and stretching the yang, or vice versa. And then you start to think about the psychological effects or the emotional effects, and it just layers on and on and on. So at first I was like, this is like very poetic and very nice, you know. But once I started landing it in my body in practice, I was like, oh, this is very interesting. Like I would just kind of do a stretch for the bladder or the hamstrings is where it maps, and then see what kinds of things I feel physically. Like I notice that I can stand up straighter and I want to move forward because my hamstrings are more awake. And that's kind of the energy of the yang side of water. And then if I do the kidney stretches, I start to feel a little more contemplative and I'm ready to sit in a lotus position or cross legged because the meridian maps along the adductors, the inner thighs. And so you start gathering the information yourself and then linking it back to this whole beautiful set of information. And the other thing that we like about the 5 elements, at least for me, is that Chinese medicine, I think part of why it's hard to understand for a Western mind is because it's very holistic. So if you are struggling with an issue, it may be related to your environment or your stress levels. I notice that when I have a glass of wine at home on my own, I feel really like congested and kind of like dull. But if I'm having a glass of wine out with friends, I process it quite differently and I don't feel those other effects because there's a lot more happening for me. And so there's
Wow, that's
the,
really interesting.
yeah, you just start
Yeah.
to consider the whole environment. So no issue is yours to deal with alone. It's always a combination of the elements also map into the season. So there's a season for every element. So winter time is actually the water season. And you want to go into kind of a hibernation mode. You're storing your energy reserves. You're getting ready for the next moves. You're getting ready for the wood energy of spring. So there's just a lot of information that you can draw upon with the 5 elements, and you can kind of pick what resonates with you first. Like Bonnie's a very strong thinking type, and she loves getting the data and she thinks very linearly. And so she likes talking about the science of the fascia and how that relates to embryology and how that relates to the movements that you're going to make. And you can probably tell from how I'm doing this interview, I'm a very like cloud thinker. Like I don't think in linear. I've gone on a lot of tangents and talked a lot in big circles, and I'm much more like emotional. And so I linked first to why the elements were useful from an emotional perspective, and the body followed for me in a more intuitive way than remembering like all of the muscle groups that track all along the fascial lines. So there's just an entry point for each person.
I think I am a lot closer to the way you approach things. And something that just like resonated with me with what you just said too, like especially the story about the wine. I don't know, I just keep on coming back to this constant realization that you can't take anything for granted, like even the smallest little things, like your environment changing or whatever. It just that was such a huge aha moment when you just told that story, because I'm like, oh
Mm.
my god. I think oftentimes we kind of get stuck into this like groove of thinking, okay, I'm learning I'm learning how my body works, I'm learning how if I drink a lot of water, I'm going to have to go pee, like things that are very, very straightforward, right?
Right.
But there's so many nuances within that, like, to your point, depending on your environment, depending on who you're talking to, your social conditions, all these different things completely change the way your inner processes are happening as well, which I don't know, that just kind of blew my mind for a second there. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, if I can build on that for a second, so that's where I think that Western and Eastern science really can complement each other, because what you're
Mm,
describing in my mind is, if you drink a lot of water, you're going to have to go pee, or if you do X, then you get X plus Y equals Z every
right,
time. And that's a very
right.
reductionist way of thinking that is pretty Western minded. And
Mhm,
that's really great if you're in an emergency or you're needing to make sweeping changes really quickly. Like if you're like, look, I don't feel good and I look at my diet and I'm not eating any vegetables, I should probably add vegetables. Like that's,
mhm, mhm.
and I will probably feel better. But um, a lot of like wellness and prevention and just general supportive health, I think, comes from this more holistic perspective where it's not really about what your actions are in a vacuum. It's about giving yourself permission to pay attention.
Yes.
And then to really build on what you already know is good for you. And it's never punitive. It's never like, oh my God, I didn't drink 8 glasses of water today. I'm a bad person. Or, oh my God, I had a glass of wine and alcohol is poison. You know,
Yeah.
I had acupuncture yesterday and it was really wild. And as soon as it was done, I was like, oh my God, I told the acupuncturist, I'm like, I just really want some cheese pizza. Like not gluten free, no substitutes. Like I want that greasy cheese pizza. And she goes, your body is telling you something. And she was like, you know what? Go enjoy
Right.
that cheese pizza. And I was like, I will. So, and I did it and I celebrated it. I really enjoyed
That's
it. I wasn't
awesome.
like, I'm bad, I'm cheating, or, you know, whatever things we start to do to minimize the whole container of our health and being alive.
I had a very similar experience. It wasn't a cheese pizza. It was a rotisserie chicken, and I like could not stop thinking about this chicken after acupuncture. And I went to Whole Foods, got myself a rotisserie chicken, and like literally mowed down 3/4 of it in one sitting because I was just I don't know. My body really wanted chicken at that time.
You
But
go.
I mean, again, like what I'm loving about what you're saying, and just even hearing the way you talk, you have such a sensitivity and consciousness about your body that to me, I feel like that is my goal. Like I want to be able to talk and notice things in my body that seemingly are so minute or just so in the background and become conscious. And it's oh my God, I just really, really appreciate what you're saying about paying attention,
Mm,
because I think that is really 90% of life, like just allowing ourselves to pay more attention to everything and
mhm,
not take anything for granted.
And just to check in too, because
mhm,
like
Yeah.
everybody gets so busy in the rush of their day-to-day lives that it's like, okay, I mean, really, let's just take a beat.
Yeah.
mhm.
Inhale, what's going on? It's a constant conversation with your body. And that's what I love about what you guys are doing is that you also have started creating all that content where people can really take it with them on the go. And it's like, okay, where can I start talking to my body in more situations, like when I'm on the plane? How am I feeling? How can I help support it when I'm tired, when I've been drinking? And it's like these are tools that people can integrate into their daily lives at any point that just help facilitate that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you use the word support. That's what we're looking
Mhm.
for. We're not looking to fix things. We're looking for how do you support yourself? You don't what if
Mhm.
you what if your underlying assumption is that you don't need fixing?
Mm, I
I
love that.
know. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a totally different mind shift. It's
Mhm.
it's like actually I want to sit with that for a while, which is crazy because it's so simple, that concept.
Yeah, I mean, let's imagine it. Like if you what would your we don't have to go through this totally, but what would your choices look like if your presumption was that your body was constantly on a path to healing?
Yeah.
What kind of, these are just rhetorical, but like when you make choices throughout your day, are you making choices based on needing on this assumption that you're broken and you need fixing or you need punishing or you need, or are you making these choices based on the assumption that like you want to do the best things because you're so happy to have a body that's
Mhm.
like working
Mhm.
so hard for you to be healthy and happy.
It's so
Yeah.
true.
And then with the meridian stuff, what's kind of neat about it is you will come into places where there's not consciousness, where usually scar tissue is a place where The fascia coats the nerve. So if there's a big buildup of scar tissue, you might not really have sensation, but you'll have a sense of like being stuck. And so if you go in and you start to engage those tissues and then try to move them through a series of movements, you might realize that your range of motion is a lot more limited and you don't feel anything. And then as you start to strip away the layers of scar tissue through the resistance flexibility training, or just stretching, or just pressing on points or getting some needling from an acupuncturist, you start to bring more consciousness to that place. And then you're still not trying to fix yourself. You're just trying to open the energy and let it flow.
Something you just said, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Something that you just said really hit home for me, because I'll do the self-care card that we went through that day during the digital detox sometimes when I just feel like I need just a little flush. And I'll notice very specifically that the right side and the left side of my body are completely different. Like sometimes I'll feel the exact same stretch in totally different places, or I have to really adjust the stretch to feel it at all in some places. And it didn't even occur to me until just now that it's like, there's a reason that you don't feel anything there. And like, what is that reason? That's huge. Oh my God, I just had a huge breakthrough. I'm so excited.
Yay, me too. And I'd like to drop in that contemplation for you that maybe you will know the reason, or maybe you won't, but you can keep engaging with it and see what comes up. Like if you're like, wow, this side feels so like strange. And sometimes I've had a lot of injuries to my left side. And I'm like, it's just such a different side. Sometimes it feels like dead in areas. And I'm not like, oh, that's my goddamn dead side. Well, sometimes I am, jokingly. But then I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend more time with this side. I could reduce it to like injuries I've had, or maybe the left side is where I store the trauma, or, or whatever. I could have a framework with that. But either whatever I come up with, I'm going to continue engaging with it and watching it and letting it develop with me, because it's not ever going to be stagnant. It might get a little bit stuck, but if you're engaging with it, then it's going to start shifting for you in some way or another.
Yeah, that's really huge, because it is all just like, the other big thing for me when we were doing the exercises with you is that I really appreciated that you gave people permission to adjust so that they could feel things, or that they, it's like, oh, that's not exactly where that acupressure point is, but go to where you're feeling it. There's a reason you're feeling it there. And like, I think that kind of permission to just trust ourselves and what we're feeling is really huge too.
100%.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Because no practitioner is in your body, right? You're the only one in there, as far as I know.
Well, we're so conditioned to ask others to tell us what's wrong with us,
Right.
which is probably what is ailing this entire generation the most. It's just this distrust of our own perspective, or our own, and it stems, I think, from our own disconnection. But I'm curious, like, for somebody who is just even beginning on this journey of becoming reacquainted with their body, and this idea of, the pressure points and the water, like the elements, and, traditional Chinese medicine, all these things, meridians, it sounds like a foreign language to them. Like, what would be your advice for them to even start getting reacquainted or reconnected to their body? Like, what is step one?
Great question.
That's a great question. And my answer, of course, is never direct. But I think, first of all, it kind of will depend on what you value, or what's most interesting to you. Because I think when I've talked about this work with some people, they really want to link into the physical science behind it. So like, why are these energy channels here? Are they actually real, or is this a concept? And for those people, I think you could start with, there's the book that hooked me was The Spark in the Machine, because Dr. Keown talks about embryology and how even at the very first few weeks of life, there's fascia developing, there's a connection around these cells. You can actually physically link the organ to the meridian if you're tracking the fascia. If you're watching the embryo develop, you can see that from this framework, the way that he's viewed it, you can make it make sense in a physical level. So if you need that kind of buy-in, that might be a good place to start. If you're somebody like me who doesn't care as much about that, because for me, my experience reigns over everything else in terms of my value, then I say start with just kind of like noticing your body and your energy. And you could start with finding a single pressure point. And we have a lot of points on our Instagram, and you could just search Chinese medicine and find a pressure point. Some really good ones to start with. Liver 3 is a master point. It's on your foot, and it's one of the main points of detox. And so if you just find that point or that area and start gently pressing on it, notice what you feel. Notice what it does for you. Do a little bit of journaling, do some deep breathing, and then land that experience for yourself, and then go get a little bit more information. I think that those are kind of two separate ends of the spectrum that you could maybe start in. So one's a very brain place and one is really experiential, but that's where I would jump off from.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really great advice, because I know the layers of traditional Chinese medicine can be really overwhelming sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like if somebody comes in and they're really imbalanced, how would you tell them to know where to start? If it's just like, oh my, like me, for example, if I'm like, fuck, my hamstrings are so tight, it's like, then would you just tell them to find an acupressure point relating to that, like through a Google search, and then you can, or...
That's a good question. I think you can only start from where people are. So like when I hear you speaking about it, the hamstrings is what's most salient of an issue for you. So I would address your hamstrings first. Some people come in and they're like, I have digestion issues. And then I might start with deep breathing, knowing that the lungs, the diaphragm, and the large intestine work well together. And also by calming your nervous system and stimulating the vagus nerve, it can help to relax all of the organs of digestion and allow people to get back into harmony. So I know it's not a really direct answer. Again, that's part of what I think has been the challenge of Chinese medicine in the Western world, is that again, the reductionist thinking, we want to move it into a place where we're like, okay, tell me what to do. And all they can say is, let me tell you where to start looking and start expanding on what you're aware of and how you can feel, and give yourself permission.
This is why this is so empowering, because it really is putting not control, but it's putting the inquiry and the responsibility back into every single individual, which I think is where it needs to be,
Yeah. And also though, I forgot to say, another place that might be helpful for people in learning about this is to find a community or go get acupuncture for the first time, or do something where you're where you're relating to somebody else, because yes, you have the knowledge in yourself and the responsibility is on you. But as we talked about before, like you're a product of like your environment, including the weather, including the people you surround yourself with, and the things that you see, and the way that your house looks, and all those things. So you might actually find that your experience is enhanced just by being able to talk about it or ask questions with another person. And that it's you get to be the owner of your experience. You are the one that is processing it, and you are ultimately in control of your own healing, but you aren't expected to do it alone. And in Chinese medicine, we have, on your body, you have meridians, these pathways of energy. And then along the way, you have points, acupressure points or acupuncture points. Those are what Dr. Keown calls the nodes. So he's like, we're channels and nodes. The way that energy organizes is through having pathways of energy, and these nodes, what are the nodes? They're hubs where important information is passed through. They're meeting points for different things that come together and pass on the important information. So part of the issue, like part of the perspective of it, is that your body isn't just one channel having to process alone, but it's a network of channels that is interacting with one another to create balance. Just like in these communities now, you and I have created a node of information, and we have different pathways that we're reaching other people. But then we now have this meeting point in the form of this podcast where this great important information is passed and is enhanced because of our connection.
I love that.
I'm so obsessed with you guys. The more we talk, the more I'm just like, I could literally talk about this all day.
I know.
Me too.
It's so rad. How has your life actually been altered by diving into all of this stuff and implementing this, on a personal level?
Oh my God. My life is so different. It's so amazing. I mean, I think that the inquiry and the permission has been really huge. I've always kind of moved towards a place where I want to create that kind of context for people to feel like they can have their own experience. But I think that having this framework that's already been mapped out, that is so rich with you can come to it from a physical level, you can come to it from an energetic level, you can come to it from an emotional place or a spiritual place. And there's still an application for you here. And also that it's proven like this, insurance will cover acupuncture. Like this has been proven to be a useful tool. So it kind of checks all these boxes. And I felt like it gave me the container to start creating the work that was really valuable to me. Whereas before this, I kind of felt a lot of these things intuitively, but I never had this framework to start from. And so that's been the biggest thing. And then in addition, it's like now whenever I travel, I mean, even on this call, I've been pressing on points because it's so portable. When I'm in the backseat of a car, I'm pushing on motion sick points. When my daughter has a hard time calming down and we're traveling, if she'll let me, I'll do some points for her. And then it helps her to, rest. And so it's really felt so, it's like just so portable and accessible for self-care. That's a really big one. And then also the network part, like creating this brand has opened up the doors to meeting so many inspiring people that we now, are making nodes and channels with. And I just find that so inspiring. I mean, I wouldn't have met you guys if I hadn't been part of Ghost Flower.
So true.
Yeah, I feel so fortunate because I'm so inspired by everything that you guys do. Like, I just can't get enough of it, and on every level. So how can people find you if someone wants to take a class with you?
Ooh, yeah. So all of our classes, you can find us on our website, ghostflower.com, ghost and flower, ghostflower.com. I think we have our classes listed in the blog right now, but our best bet is actually Instagram. We're at Ghost Flower Active. And so if you're on the East Coast, Bonnie teaches at Skytang 2 or 3 times a week. And I teach once a week in Santa Barbara at a studio that is incredible called Yoga Soup on Thursdays right now. So yeah, we posted on our Instagram. I think it's also on our Facebook, Ghost Flower Active. I should check. I'm not so great with the marketing part of things. I'm more about the energy, you guys.
There's
Totally
nothing wrong with that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Kaita, thank you so much for just spending your time and your energy with us. It's like invaluable. Every single time we hang out, I feel like we just learn so much and we get re-inspired and we want to do all the things, so just really thank you.
Can't wait to see where it goes next.
Thank you. Yeah. So grateful, you guys.
Music for Woo New is composed by Adam Miller.